Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about time travel and how we time travel all the time. We don't need to be magical. Well, we do need to be magical. We don't need a time machine. We can do it organically, and we do it constantly. How many times have you repeated a situation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times where you feel like you are just in Groundhog's Day and in a loop? It might not be the same person. It might not be exactly the same situation, but the energy is exactly the same when you go through it all over again. You're, in a sense, time traveling back to an old timeline you've already visited. Now, you notice in a lot of the time travel movies that every time the characters time travel, especially if they're time traveling in the same thing, they always come back with more information than they had. And you will find that with your time travel. Every time you go through another loop, you see something again, you have more information on how things are going to happen, what's going to happen next, and what do? Do you try to shift the timeline and change the outcome? That's what we have to decide if that's what we want to do or not. We can do the same thing again, and eventually we're going to loop back around to what people would call, okay, it's like a past thing, but it's really you're revisiting an old timeline. There's no time. It's vibration. You're in a different vibration. You're going to keep seeing the same stuff. You're going to keep living what you would call, or not you specifically, but what are humans going to call, this is like old. I've seen this before. Why do I keep seeing the same thing? It's almost like deja vu, but it's really kind of not, because it's not so much you kind of have a remembering of it, you kind of did it already. And you're like, why am I doing this again? I've seen this. I've seen this multiple times, and we're doing it again. So we can constantly be in the past. The question is, the more knowledge you get, the more times you go around the loop of this timeline, you go through the past situation, the energy will start the same. It's where our energy comes from as if we're going to shift the timeline or not. We're either going to close it out, we're going to do something different, and the timeline's going to end differently. We're going to, in a sense, change the past. We're going to rewrite it. We always have a chance to rewrite it if you look at every time you go through it, something that similar, but it's the same energy, you can always rewrite it. We can always rewrite the past. That's the beauty of the more quantum we become, the more multi aspects we bring in, we can rewrite who we were, what we were. It changes constantly. We can continually rewrite ourselves. We're not stuck to one timeline or one past. We can change how we feel about it. We can change what we did. We'll continually get opportunities to do that. You'll see a lot of movies where the characters keep looping in the same thing over and over and over again because they haven't quite got it yet. They haven't quite changed the thing they need to change yet. But eventually we get it and we move to something else. So we're always revisiting the past. Now jumping to the future. What the human would call the future. It's really just a different timeline in a different vibration. So we can look at different timelines all the time. We can look at a timeline from where we are, what's going to happen. And the more we shed emotion, the more we open up, the more we expand out, the more we have the capabilities to see. At some point, it's just other people's stuff because we don't have any emotion on somebody else's stuff. So you can see their timelines very clearly. It's kind of like when you get a hint of what's going to happen when you can watch a sporting event and someone says something and the next play it happens and you're like, how do they know that? They read the timeline. Timelines are continually shifting though. That's why a lot of times when you go to a psychic or if you're into going and someone predict the future, there's a zillion futures. We're continuously seeing them. We just don't realize it. Sometimes we'll see people that'll be very important players later on in our movie. They just aren't the main characters yet. They're kind of there to almost tease the future for us. Like they're going to come in, but they're not coming in right now. I've called it before, you're kind of syncing up your energy with people to see, are we ready yet to have a reality together? That's sort of what I call it. And you get to a certain space where you know when that's happening. I know I've seen certain people that are going to come in later. It's just not time for them yet. But they'll come back when it's their time and when I'm ready for them to. It's not time yet. The timelines they're not lined up yet. So when you look at where you're starting from, and it's always important to look at where our energy is of where we're starting from, we can see how it's going to end. We can look at the future of that, of what the human would call the future of that. We can carry that timeline all the way to the end and see where it's going to go. We have the capability to always time travel. We will revisit the past, we'll revisit the future. It's different vibrations, time's not linear, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to make it linear. We have the capability to do that. And if you don't feel like you do when you're awake, try to do it when you're asleep. You will have an idea of how something's going to end. I'll always tell people, if you have two options, one night sleep on one night sleep on the other, ask the question to see that timeline before you go to sleep and see how you feel the next day. You might see stuff, you might not. You might just not feel good the next morning. You might have a sick feeling in your stomach about one and feel good when you wake up the other day thinking about the other timeline. Feel into the timeline. Just like when you can see a train wreck coming for someone else, we can see a train wreck coming for ourselves. But the emotion clouds in and we don't want to see it. We get attached to the characters in our story. They're just energy. They're just there to show us the energy, the aspects of ourselves. They're not there to really get attached to. The human gets attached to them. That's not really their purpose. So if you take the faces off of them and just look at the energy and look at the timeline as to what we're trying to do, why are we in it? Are we in it because of obligation, or anger, or greed, or why are we even here? Why are we participating? Some kind of lack or need. Why are they in it? What are they bringing to the table? You can see how the timeline's going to end up. You might still choose to do it, but you can see the whole thing play out. And the more expansive you get, the more you'll be able to see your own. And that's when the power really comes, because then you can choose what you participate in and what you don't waste your time in anymore. It might be something you used to play out for 3 years and you'll do it in 2 months because you know how it ends. You always have the capability to teeter back and forth and play with the timelines. You have the capability to do it. A lot of times when I'll talk about the stuff, someone will say, well, I just don't want to feel like I'm that powerful, that I can do that. Well, that's something we have to look at. Why don't we want to be that powerful? Why don't we want to think we can do that? Of course we can do that. Any movie you've ever seen, someone thought about it because it happened somewhere. They're supposed to bring that in. If you really like a movie and you watch it over and over, it's an activation for you to see something. Timelines constantly shift. You might look at one person and having a reality with one person one day and it looks great. The next day you look at it and it does not look like you want to be part of it. That's because they shifted or we shifted. Nothing's set in stone. No timelines are. Don't get so bogged down or when it's going to happen. It's going to happen when it's supposed to happen. Everyone's lined up. I can know what timeline's going to happen and I'll feel like, oh, here's the beginning. I'm going to lay the groundwork for this timeline. I know it's not going to come until later. I can see it's out. It'll come in at a certain point, but not now. A lot of times I'll get a sense of that first, especially if I'm attached to the timeline. And that's something we can see all the possibilities, all the timelines. We can't get attached to them. The minute we get attached to them, that's when we run into a problem, in a sense, because then we want that one to happen, but there might be a better one to happen. But I don't know if I dream about that person or that character and their back's to me, or even if their back's not to me, but in the dream, their back, the perception of them I get is their back is away from me. Even if I'm not even in the dream, I just see them with their back. I'm looking at their back. I know it's not time yet. They're not ready yet. And that also means I'm not ready yet. I have something I need to go do, other things I have to do before that's gonna happen. I had that happen recently where I thought something was gonna come in and I dreamed that and I knew right away, it's not coming in right now. I can see it, it's just not quite there yet. So enjoy your time travel, know you have the capability to do it, and keep practicing the art of intuition.